He pulled off the Pacific Coast Highway and made a right onto a dirt road that eventually led to the ranch of Susan, a supporter of the junior posse whom he had known for years. His tires skidded on the loose gravel, leaving a growing trail of dust behind as he continued up the mountain. For someone who had been born and raised in Compton, driving through nature was cathartic and removed him from the dangers that he had experienced in his neighborhood. Every time he drove to Susan's ranch, he was transported into a world where green brush and wildlife outnumbered the humans and cars he was used to being around. It was an escape, a world that wasn't dictated by the black and white uniforms of police officers or the black skin of young men in his neighborhood who were often shot at by the same officers. This world was green, and its natural soundscape overpowered the sounds coming from his car's speakers and the low murmur of the traffic on the Pacific Coast Highway miles below. Susan's home was the farthest from the highway and required driving along several dirt roads before reaching her property. The entrance felt familiar at this point. He had made the drive so many times before that it began to feel like muscle memory, the same way he used to shoot free throws with his eyes closed in high school to impress the prettiest girls on campus. Pulling off into the dirt road was his favorite part of the drive because it allowed his mind to zone out and everything he worried about to come into crystal clear focus. His children, his family, and their future. Charles parked his car, got out, and took a long whiff of the fresh Malibu air, picking up the scent of the gardenias and roses in the nearby garden. "Hi, Charles," Susan said with a smile, welcoming him inside her home. "Are you hungry?" Charles smiled and said that he was. It was routine for them to eat and study the equestrian books that she had bought for him years before. He studied the books with an intensity that he had never approached his schoolwork with. Studying diligently and reading about the new training methods from the best equestrian jumpers was the only way to improve his jumping, and there were tips in the books that he hadn't learned on the farms. An hour later, Charles and Susan headed to the stables to groom and saddle up 2 thoroughbred horses that poked their heads out from the stalls as they approached them. Warm Blood, Charles's favorite horse, neighed and flicked his tail at the sight of them. Warm Blood stood still while he brushed his long brown coat, occasionally flipping his mane in the air. Charles had never owned his own horse, but grooming Warm Blood felt like the closest thing he had to owning his own. "Good horse," he said. "Good horse." After 30 minutes, the two hopped on their horses and rode around the local trails before training. Although Charles's jumping timing had declined over the past year, the intensity that he brought to each of his training sessions hadn't. The first hour of training included flat work, a series of slow trots over poles on the ground that loosened up the horses before jumping. Groundwork, as Charles also called it, was as important as jumping because it let him feel out what kind of mood the horse was in that day. If the horse was having a bad day, it would tense up when Charles pulled on its reins. If it was calm and rested, it would comply with each tug of the reins. The second hour included jumping and working on perfecting the 2-point jumping position. Charles crouched on his horse and got ready for the first big jump of the day. He bent his knees in a 45-degree angle and lifted his bottom off the horse's back as the horse timed his jump and sailed over the wooden pole with ease, landing moments later while Charles's body hovered closely over its back. He rode toward the next jump, 1 stride, 2 strides, just like he had done for the past 15 years of his life, and Warm Blood was in the air again. His body leaned forward on the second jump, prompting a response from Susan, who stood feet away. "Make sure you let the horse's feet relax on the landing," she said while looking intently at him. "And keep your knees bent a little more next time." As a jumper, it was Charles's job to ensure that his horse was comfortable with every leap. Horses like Warm Blood had been trained their entire lives to jump and just needed the reassurance to make the hurdles. Charles admired the power of the horse when it approached the jump. He could feel the horse's strength building up, knowing it wanted to get over the obstacle. But it was important for him to keep rhythm with Warm Blood to help him make that jump together. He landed his jumps the rest of the afternoon, leaving a big smile on Susan's face.